Hey y'all, it's me Amanda, and today I'm just going to discuss what I read in October, which was only 2 books. So, basically all of my book updates have been pretty quick because it's like 2 or 3 books. So this month I started off with Firefight by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Reckoners trilogy. It's kind of hard to tell you what it's about because obviously that would be spoilers for Steelheart, the first book. Basically, this is the sequel to Steelheart, which is based on a world where there are superheroes, but they're all mean and they're all bad guys, or at least almost all. So, what's up with that? So, this book took me a really strange, a strangely long amount of time in order to read. I don't know why this took me so long as it did. I don't know. I think part of it was that reading this book, I had this sense of something bad is going to happen. And it made it hard for me to read because I kept being like, "Oh, I don't want the bad thing to happen." And I apologize if that's all a spoiler. I think it's kind of obvious in a sense, right? Like it should be when you're reading it. So it made me actually kind of anxious as opposed to just plain enjoying the book, and I read it very slowly. In fact, it took me most of October to read this book, and it really shouldn't have taken me that long. Like, I can understand it taking me a while, but the amount of time it actually took was a little ridiculous, to be honest. Overall, I really did think it was a good book. I think I liked Steelheart more, honestly, and I called it. I figured out what was going to happen. So good for me, kind of. I'm not actually happy about that. So I've started Calamity since then, and I'm not going to talk about that one yet. I know. I'm trying to think of what else I want to say about Firefight. I just don't have a ton to say. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was fine. I feel like David has overall grown as protagonist. He's a lot less annoying, I think, as a whole. And we get to meet some new characters in this one. I liked them, but they also didn't stick like super well in my mind, if that makes sense. And we get to know some of our other favorite characters a little bit more. Still have characters that I'm not crazy about, even though I feel like I should. I don't understand why I'm not crazy about them. I know, I'm not. Sometimes you just don't have a lot to say about a book, and in this case, I just don't have a ton to say. So let's go right on to the other book I read. So, like I said, it took me most of October to read Firefight. And then at the very end of the month, I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne in like 3 days because I loved it. After reading Firefight, I needed a more lighthearted book, and this was it. Sorry. I got the copy of with like the movie tie-in cover, and like I don't know why I did that because I hate it. I actually like the movie. I'm going to get into that in a second, but I kind of hate the cover. like I like those cute cartoony romance novel covers that are really popular right now. I'm into it. I know some people don't, but I like it. I like it a lot more than like the buff man chest thing. So this book, very different from Firefight. I hope no one's like insulted that I enjoyed this more than that book because, anyway, we're all allowed to like what we like, right? So, basic premise of The Hating Game is two publishing companies combined together. They have different attitudes and feelings about books. And we've got our person who kind of represents the attitude of each one. We have Lucy Hutton and Joshua Templeman. And they hate each other, and they play these little, like, we hate each other games back and forth. So it's an enemies to lovers romance. It's very basic. We don't need to go super into the concept behind it, there's not a whole lot. It's a romance novel, and it's what I wanted and needed at the time that I read it. So I actually saw the movie first for this book. I had heard of the book, and it popped up on Hulu. I was like, oh, okay, let's check it out. And I really loved the movie. Now, I'll do a little bit of a comparison. I'm not going to tell you specific differences because I'm trying not to spoil things. But like I said, really enjoyed the movie. So then I was like, I got to read the book. And it took me a while to actually read the book because I'm weird about how I do things. All right, so one other background thing. The way I personally am, say, I'm watching a movie that's an adaptation of a book, but I watch the movie first, or I read the book first, I tend to prefer whatever I experienced first. That's how I am most of the time. Except in cases where it's clear that one is very superior to the other. So I have a tendency that, say, I see the movie first based off of a book. I oftentimes end up liking the movie a little bit more. It, sticks with me in a different way. This is if the adaptation has changes, but they're, small, inconsequential changes, okay? That's important to know. Anyway, getting back into the whole point. I read the book after seeing the movie, and the book is way better. Now, this isn't to say that I think the movie is terrible. It's not. I think the movie actually is a pretty good adaptation of the book. However, the book is, way more detailed. There's so much more. It's the movie, they got all the same major beats of the story. They got the major things that are important about the characters and most of the major lines and everything. It's good. But the book it's so much detail, and you lose a lot going from the book to the movie. All these details about the characters that I thought really fleshed them out and really made it an overall even more enjoyable experience. So, if you like enemies to lovers, this is the way to go. It's a good, fluffy romance novel. I really just found it thoroughly enjoyable. The two characters have great back and forth between them. There's great, chemistry and feeling towards it. And yeah, I love it. And I think the movie's worth watching. It's not, the best movie ever, but I enjoyed it. I actually think it's interesting. This book, I think, is a little bit different than a lot of romance novels. One thing romance novels, almost all of them do, is the 3/4 of the way through, the characters break up. They have a fight, misunderstanding, and they break up, and then they get back together at the end. This one doesn't do that. It just takes a long time for them to get together, and it's hesitant the entire time, which I honestly prefer and think is really good. Not that, the 3/4 breakup is always, 100% horrible. It's just very stereotypical. And it's nice when a romance novel breaks the mold, even if it's just a little bit. I appreciate it. So, and the movie is no, we want to keep that whole 3/4 breakup, feel to it. Misunderstanding and everything. That's the only spoiler I'll give you. Anyway. That's all I have to talk about with books this month. Always short and sweet. Hope you're all doing well, and goodbye.